So good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining. Very happy to have you here. And as I hope you've read what I said about this particular talk on my website and on Facebook, I will be talking about my inspirations and my what I called obsessions, or what my wife calls obsessions as well, with photography. And I'm pretty sure this is exactly the same stuff that every one of us has. And although we may vary in type of things we are very much into, or the influencers that make huge impacts on us, I think the overall thing, it's something that all of us share. And I've heard this across the previous talks and discussions with other photographers as well, before kind of popping up here and there and there, but nobody was really into explaining that in the wider spectrum. And I must say, I don't think myself to be in any way special, that I have to do it and people have to listen what I have to say about it. That's not exactly about, although we will be discussing my images, but it's not exactly about me. It's about really what the way I see it is about how what we like or what we enjoy influences our way of shooting and presenting our work, and why we go this way or that way, or this direction or that direction, within photography, within art, and obviously within light. So let me now share my screen with the presentation. And let's start. I called it Inspirations and Obsessions, of course. This is my website, derekmichalski.com. If you haven't been there, I invite you to visit my website. And let's start with inspiration first, because they come before, or they walk before obsessions. And as you can see, this is a list, and I have to be very honest, I've been sitting on this list for about a fortnight. It's extremely difficult to narrow it down to just a few names that were one way or another the most important for me. And as I said, I reckon that would be across the board with everybody else. And you see some names that you definitely know, and I would expect that you guys would know all of these names. And I'm not going to talk about those people in very detail. I'm going to focus on examples of pictures from those photographers, and explain why what I found there, that I took them with me on my photography journey for more than 20 years now. God, time flies. And obviously Ansel Adams, the godfather of photography on all levels. This is just Fernand Fall from California, from 1940. Oh, I think it's 48. So long time ago. The beginning for me of really professional photography starts with all around Ansel Adams, but not only for me, for everything he did to work with the negative, with the development of the negative, and with the positive, and how positive should be treated. At the very beginning of my journey with photography, I obviously met his work, just like everybody else, and I got me those famous books by him, that negative, positive and stuff, and I went through them. I didn't understand 99% of those, of course, back then. And no matter how much I tried to understand them, they were just too detailed, too sophisticated, too far out for me. But what they did show me, the books, the examples with the books, the photographies, there is how photography should be treated as a work of art. I don't have a art background. I've never studied art, but I've always liked it. I've been always drawn to various forms of art, uh, starting with theater, long time ago, in really in my childhood. Not me playing, but actually being drawn to watching it and try and reading stuff. And then obviously later on, it kind of developed into the love of books, poetry, literature, which stays with me till now and is an integral and very important part of who I am and what I do. But that 20 years ago kind of was transferred into photography. This one, as you can see, I've chosen one that is not always put as one of those biggest Ansel Adams photographies. I've chosen this one because obviously it's of the quality that you would expect from Ansel Adams, and I still can't believe that in 1980s, 1990s you could buy a print, A4, A3 print by $20 in America by Ansel Adams. And I can't believe that this guy had no money to pay bills most of his life. These are masterpieces for me. And the quality of the print, the tonal range, all the technical aspects are beyond what I think I've seen in any other photographer in the world. I had a pleasure of seeing few prints by Adams in the flesh, and there is nothing that online presentation can do to understand them. They are just fabulous. However, this one, as I said, I haven't chosen the one that would probably be, you know, most common, because for me, this photography is amazing for one reason, apart from obviously technical issues, but for one reason, there is so much going on here. There is a waterfall, there is a river, there is this tree on the right, there are mountains in the background, there are those boulders just in front of the tree. It's like 5 or 7 photographs in one. In a way, it's a very different type of masterpiece of composition than to what normally Ansel Adams would do, because he tends to he had a tendency to have us focus on one or two aspects of a landscape, even if he was doing a massive, wide landscape photograph, like the Snake River, for instance. There are always two elements your eyesight will go first. And here, I can't stop jumping around this photograph. I can't focus on one thing, but it's not destructive. It's not unpleasant. It's something that keeps my interest going and my eye revolving, traveling across this photograph from left to right, from top to bottom. There is no central point for me in this one. And for a landscape photographer, this is very, very tricky, because obviously we're always told, look, there has to be some point of interest. And I am one that favors this kind of one photograph, one message thing. Here, there is no one message apart from this one. This is a beautiful world, and we should cherish it, and we should make sure that it doesn't disappear with us, which was obviously what Ansel Adams' message was all about across his career. And thanks to his work, we have so much preserved in America in terms of land. And obviously that later resonated with photographers, painters, people, politicians as well across the world. And I think this is this is quintessential Ansel Adams photograph for the reasons that I've stated. And that is what influences me since I first saw this photograph. It's just respect, appreciation of the world in front of our eyes as it's given, as it is. Apart, obviously, from these technical aspects of his art. And there's another one, very different one, I think. And that's why I've chosen this one as in certain juxtaposition to the other. You would not photograph that tree if you did not like it one way or another, if it wouldn't capture you. No, none of us, I think. And I believe Adams must have liked this photograph a lot, just like me. And as you can see later on, I shoot forest and trees a lot, and this is probably the best subject for me. The subject I'm never tired of. I come from area which is from a town which is surrounded by deep forests, and I kind of almost grew running in the forest every day with my friends as a kid. So I don't think it's a surprise that it kind of comes back to me now that I'm looking for ways to show my interest in art and show myself through my art as well. That I'm looking for subjects within nature. This one is very different from the previous one because unlike the previous one, it has this one subject of this photograph, as if Adams took it out of the wider landscape, saying, "Look, it's good. Sometimes it's very good to stop and stare and admire, and just love what you see. This little thing that you see in front of you. The tree is obviously not little, but if you think of a wider landscape and the ways he would have shot that, it is a little fragment of what he could have taken. But he instead, very often, it's not just this photograph, it's been a lot of photographs by him, focusing on very intimate landscape, or on very, selecting one subject from the landscape, and with various methods, whether by aperture or by time of exposure or by filters used, kind of put it in front of us a lot more than the rest of it, or by framing as well. Framing was very important for him. And this image for me is just that. Stop, take a look, really admire, find your point of view and find your frame. I think this case was very easy. I might be completely wrong, but I think in this case was really easy. But sometimes it's not, as we all know. It's not easy to frame the picture. What I mean by framing the picture, I don't mean just finding a good vantage point that will look good in the picture. If you took time ever to visit my website and look at my blog, or even read that stuff that I'm writing in LEMAG, I hope it's very clear that I'm in favor of photography with message, which led me to write those kind of articles under the title, "What Are You Shooting About?" And as I said in the previous one, I think this one is also very clear that Anselm was basically shooting about his love for the landscape, his love for that particular tree, his appreciation of that particular tree, um, and that is transparent all through his work. Not only his work, of course. And the third one is obviously a famous one, and I've chosen one famous one that everyone knows, because in a very sort of quiet way, as I said, it combines the two previous ones. It's a very interesting photograph, this moonrise, including not only the way it was taken, but the way it was developed, because Ansel Adams thought it. He was driving back home from a very, very unsuccessful photography day. Very, really, a day that he hasn't taken any important shots, and he was commissioned and paid to take good shots. So he was rather angry with himself and rather dissatisfied with the day. And then as they drove the truck, he saw that that moon coming out above the clouds, and they drove further down. And at a certain point, he showed that he just noticed that the moonlight is reflected on the crosses. And obviously, no time to read light, no time to camera on a tripod on the back of the truck. He shot that, and he thought he miscalculated the exposure, so he never bothered to develop the negative. I won't go into further detail, guys. It's on the. If you don't know the story, it's worth reading because it's a fantastic story of a wonderful photograph. Why do I say this is a photograph that combines the ideas of the previous ones? Obviously, this is a wider landscape, not very wide, but wide enough. Let's say it was taken with 35 millimeters lens. If I'm not mistaken, it was f/64, but I might be mistaken on this one. So his kind of favorite one, and it shows us absolutely beautiful landscape of New Mexico. Harsh, demanding, quiet, with those beautiful mountains at the back, but also kind of uninspiring foreground. There is not much interest there, apart from those crosses. And for me, the message here was, much as you look in landscape photography or in photography altogether, much as you look to record a wonderful wide landscape, you should never skip detail. Those little crosses that it was literally 2 or 3 minutes and they were dimmed. The light was gone from the crosses. And that's why this photograph is important to me. It kind of reminds me not to go crazy about, oh wow, what a you know, if you go to, I don't know, Dolomites or Alps or Scotland or Ireland or Scotland, whatever, right? Intimate landscape, even wider landscape, is built from those little points of interest. That in this one are those crosses. Another one, just one photograph from Alfred Steiglitz, the steerage. It's obviously a world famous photograph that he sold in, well, thousands of copies, made him a lot of money, brought him fame. Wish you all the same. And but for me, and that goes to later, I didn't really realize at the very first why I liked the film. I liked it from the very first moment when I've seen it, even before I read it, that it's a great one. There was something that drew me into it, and I didn't know what it is. And it was only later when I studied different guys that I understand that I could go back to this photograph and think, yeah, that's really that what is it. And it's not the people, it's not the plight. As a photographer, I'm not very much interested in people. I don't shoot people. I tend to avoid having any people. They find it destructive and ruining very often my photograph. Um, so it wasn't those who actually, you know, they came from Europe to America after a long journey, not knowing the outcome of the journey, not knowing what's going to happen with them, and all that. A very important social kind of like photograph. But for me, it was the lines here only, the the plank, the beam, that beam as well, somehow, and the stairs, somehow all this kind of comes into one thing. This geometry of this photography was important for me. And it's not the best example of it. It never was. He just used those lines as the lines of interest. His interest was really in the plight of people. So I don't really see eye to eye with Stiglitz on this photograph. But it was for me something that's triggered in my mind, that something here is what I should pursue and what I should kind of look into and discover further, which I did. But before we get there, that's another one. I come from a small, 90,000 people town, so obviously we didn't have any of those. Not to mention that my town was razed to the ground as Russians were fighting Germans in 1945, because it was positioned very strategically on the way to Berlin, and it's about 250 kilometers away from Berlin. So the fights were fierce, and it was literally razed to the ground. I was raised in a town that had 3 blocks left when Russians walked into town after the fighting. So obviously, everything is, well, new as by communist building standards back in Poland. So everything that old always fascinated me and interested me, because I've seen pictures from my hometown before the war, and it was that kind of old and beautiful back then. None of this is left. So always, when I visited Berlin, Vienna, Zagreb, London, Paris, whatever, I was drawn to explore the cities, because I kind of was thinking, how was my own hometown, how my own hometown looked or would look, if I was able to see it. How would I feel in a very, very different environment, growing up in a very, very different city? And I've met few times in my hometown tourists from Germany, old people who were born in my hometown, who obviously left it as Russian or before Russians came in. And they were completely lost. They were old people with little maps, and they couldn't tell where they are. And it's, as I said, it's not a big city. So I knew that must have been a massive difference. This completely different town, really. The one I lived and the one they lived in. Perhaps that's from, I understand that my fascinations with not with architecture, but with town environment, city environment comes from. And obviously, again, Ajit, absolutely fantastic work on Paris. Paris that is, again, no longer doesn't exist. It's gone. And it was gone as he was shooting. It was disappearing. It was disappearing in front of his very eyes, and he was shooting and shooting and shooting. And for those of you who didn't go deeply into Ajit, I would say please do, because this is a very, very interesting photographer. And although he has been elevated in the photography world to some sort of fame, I think he deserves a lot more attention. This is just one picture, not particular picture. I mean, it's a nice framing and everything, but I included him because the way he shot Paris, I thought it actually takes me there. I almost feel like I am there in that old Paris of 19th century. I could kind of walk those streets along with him as he was shooting those photographs. And my understanding of not architecture photography, but cityscape or city environment photography is exactly that. That makes the viewer not only appreciate the lines and skillful framing, but gives the viewer the feel that you are there. Um, Now, another one, Paul Strand, again, city, but very, very different this time. This is obviously New York, this is Wall Street, and this is, again, a combination of those influences before from Ajit and from this photograph and from Steiglitz, where you have not only architecture of the city presented, a small part of it, a lot more intimate, but you employ lines, you employ contrast, you treat architecture as a tool to present some idea, which is you take what is out around you, because obviously he couldn't do much with the way this wall has been built, but he used it skillfully to attract attention, to create juxtaposition, to create, in my mind, to create or to start a train of thought as to what's really going on in this photograph. And I might be completely wrong. I'm never really bothered if I'm wrong about the reading of art, because that's my reading. And as long as I can relate to it, it's fine with me. And I think that should be how it should be done with everybody else. For me, you see Wall Street, you see people going probably to work. They all go one direction, and they seem a little bit in a hurry if you look at those steps. This might be morning, this might be people going from work, or might be in the evening people going home from work. And they are small, and above them there are those black holes of modern architecture, and it's obviously Wall Street, and he called this picture Wall Street, so we know it's not some other, less important street. This is money. This is where money is made. This is where money is stored. This is wealth. This is where capitalism is built. Concrete, harsh, with those huge dark holes and those tiny little people that go at the bottom of the image. They will be gone as well. For me, this picture says they will be gone. They will move on. They will pass on. But this will stay. Something that they created will stay, but not in a way, to me, not in a way like you I think everybody wants, when we're gone, to have something, to leave something important, at least for some people, so we can be appreciated and memorized somehow when we're done. But here is a lot more sinister, and that's why I think he rendered that building in that kind of dark way. He could have done it. It was a master photographer. He could have done it a different way, but he did it that way. That's my understanding of this picture, using photography, using here is a cityscape to create emotion, to give a message, to create a story. And as I said before, I am all up for one picture, one story thing. And that's exactly it. That's what I see here. That kind of, in a way, cruel, dispassionate way of in which capitalism or money are ruling the world. Um, and that's another by him, very different one. He was also commissioned, like Adams, to do to take photographs on small villages in New Mexico, and he did. And Adams did took the same church, and many people after that, of course, including casual snappers who go there because these guys went. What is important here is that this is the back of the church. This is not the front of the church. The front is big. There's two towers and everything. You can't even see it. It's a very Paul Strand, early Paul Strand photograph, kind of pictorialism thing. You know, when they would put a camera on the tripod, and during the exposure they would kick the tripod a bit, so it moved, and the photograph is a little bit fuzzier, kind of a picture style. That's how they did it back then. And I wouldn't say that there is anything striking in this photograph. Of course, it's almost 100 years. Hats off to those guys doing it, traveling with those big Kodak boxes, with brownies, heavy tripods and all that. But other than that, it's just a pretty normal photograph. However, because the church is taken from the back, and it doesn't even have that kind of catching structure or form that we would call, yes, that's something one-off. It's not. All of these churches are pretty much caught in the same, built in the same way. Now, because it's taken from the back, for me, Strand wants to say everything is important in the way of an artist, in the way of photographer. There's this saying about professional photographers dancing around the teapot, which basically means, I think you know it, but basically means that you just don't go and take a photograph and think, okay, I'm done. You explore your subject from all angles, from all levels. You should, from a higher position, from a lower, from medium, you go all around, like you were dancing kind of around the teapot. I like this expression. And this is it. This is saying, and Strand from this church actually exhibit just this photograph. And to me, this is a message that a photographer, an artist, should always go for things that are not obvious. And that's how we are looking for our own way of expression as well, which after all is the most important thing in the art, that our art is even before it's art, because that's the only way it has any value. And if people can relate to that, that's absolutely wonderful. If people cannot relate to that and we remain unknown, well, that's it. Man Ray. glass tears. Absolutely wonderful photograph. Absolutely revolutionary guy on all levels, right? It wasn't the technical aspect of Man Ray's photography that was so important, but it was his approach to the subject and this kind of surrealism and Dada kind of way of looking at. For me, this one, and I actually wrote about it as well at some point. It's actually a part of a slightly bigger picture. But he presented it also this way. He trimmed it down to this format. And for me, this photograph is important because if you look at the combination of those glass tears here, there's the 3 on one side, 2 on the other side of the nose. And obviously it's all around shapes, round shape here and there. But for me, the most important thing is the dynamism of this undynamic scene that is created by the juxtaposition of those 3 kind of triangle here, built in a triangle, and 2 those beads in on the other side, as in creating a line between them. But more importantly, because on this wider photograph, you have another 2 of glass beads here on the right picture. So you would have 4 and 3. And my question always was, why not 4 on the left side of the face? Why not? Where is this one that was supposed to be here? And it's gone. It's not there. And that, for me, that was the way of, again, looking, going back to this, what Adams in his Moonrise, I'm sorry, did, was look for a detail, and that detail can actually unlock the picture, unlock the beauty of the picture. And here, that's what it is, the lack of this, the distortion in the dynamics of this picture, distortion in the balance from left and right hand side of the nose, is what does it for me. I don't even care how he kind of managed to have those glasses, those beads hold there, which is obviously another question. But that I'm always looking at this photograph, I'm always drawn into that dynamic of it, as in the composition of those glass beads. And I think this is also important, what we look in photographs, what actually makes it life, what actually goes and creates this interest in the viewer that goes beyond the technical aspect or beyond the beauty of the scene shot. Again, this is again Man Ray, Ingress violin from 1924, and apart from wonderful concept that made a lot of waves back then, and keeps, this is one of those photographs that I understand people learn about at studying photography. For me, it was pretty simple, and we won't dwell on this one for long, but the message for me was, don't you dare stopping of exploring your subject just because you see this or that or that. You should always go and look beyond it, wider. You should always try and explore your subject, even to the radical. And obviously, Man Ray is 1924. These guys experimented with pretty much everything. The next such big experimentation happened in America in the 60s and 50s, late 50s and early 60s. Um, and that's it. Beautiful composition, beautiful thinking, using um, woman's body, looking at is as an instrument. Um, it's not novel. It's not something we couldn't think of, but he actually did it, and he made it in a very beautiful way, and that was it. So the message for me was just don't think that what you're looking at is everything. Try and go beyond. And here, I hope you know this guy, Laszlo Moholy-Nagy. It's a Hungarian guy who lived in Berlin and worked in Berlin, and then when Nazis took over, he moved to London and then to the States. Absolutely wonderful, influential photographer. That for me, this guy for me opened lots of doors and cupboards in my mind, really, with his photography. That's again 1928, 1929, and they were looking and experimenting with form and shapes and lines and curves and everything, not so much with tonality and everything. And here is an exploration of lines here. He would, this is taken from Berlin Radio Tower, and he took a number of photographs from that. Looking down, that was looking down and looking up was pretty much his favorite thing. And he always experimented with, treated the landscape as a graphic form. And if this photograph is looked from a certain distance, all you can see is this black and white patches of white and black lines. And for me, that was again the school of how to frame, how to look at what I want to shoot, the object or the subject, and frame it the way that would convince me. I don't want to convince a viewer, although perhaps I should, but I don't know the viewer. I don't know who will be watching, looking, liking, disliking my photographs. I know what I want to show. I know what I see, and I know what it does to me. I know how I feel about it, and that feeling is what I want to express. And Laszlo Moholy-Nagy was, for me, the guy who showed me more than anybody else how I should do that. And here is another one taken from Berlin Radio Tower by him. Again, exploration of lines and circles and that sort of thing. As you can see, they were not, well, he wasn't that much into tonality of the picture or grays and blacks and all this stuff that people are crazy about very often. He was into, this is a frame full of lines and circles, and let's see how they perform together. And I live in London now, and big city as it is, I have to tell you that it's very, very difficult to find subjects like this, not the radio tower, but to find going up or looking up and going up and looking down or looking up at the buildings. It's very difficult to frame, to find interesting subjects for me. So I can only admire, looking at his work, how many he was able to find. And Berlin is considerably smaller than London, right? It's what, 3 million people, 4 million people only. So it's like 1/3 of London. Sebastião Salgado, an absolutely finally contemporary photographer from Brazil. Kuwait Desert in the Flames. That was that's one of the series of oil exploration pictures that he did. And I remember sitting in non-existing anymore Borders in London, in Oxford Street, learning 20 years ago, going through thousands of books that they had on photography, looking for photographs, and coming across his work. And it was like it was like suddenly I ran out of everything. I stopped. It arrested me immediately, his work. And I spent good part of that year looking at his photographs and studying them just for myself, reading a lot about them and about him. This guy for me is beyond important for today's photography, for 20th century photography. He was one of those who takes great pains that his photographs are properly executed in the print, just like Adams did. But what is far more important for me is this social aspect of his photography. I said before, I don't like shooting people. I'm not interested. But he was the one who showed me that if you have good subject, if you have good cause, that's where it is. And that's where people find their place in photography. And this juxtaposition here, extremely strong, of this fire burning, polluting, because this is a pollution. This is raping the earth. That's what this photograph is telling me. But it's not only raping the earth. Someone in front of this photograph here, this guy that is poured over with some non-flammable thing to protect him from catching those flames. Look at his work conditions. That oil burning, to me, is a very proud subject of this photograph. It burns like crazy, happily, proudly. Here I am, look at me. While the man who works there very, very hard doesn't look proud at all. Absolutely not, not to me. He may be earning good money, but that's not the point. And I think Sebastião Salgado wanted to show in this photograph that what we are actually doing is ruining the earth. This is a very environmental photograph. I spent a couple of years, I lived in the Middle East for a couple of years, and I traveled all around it, and I've seen lots of those because I worked very close to petrochemical industry. And I've been to lots of oil fields and gas fields all across the region. They're very small. I always thought they're big installations. They're not. They're really, really small. Even refineries. Refinery in UAE is just one. It's outside Abu Dhabi, a place I visited very frequently. I don't know. It's really 15 minutes leisure walk around it. That's it. But it creates enormous wealth for the country, for the region. But that's what's behind it, really. And I think Sebastião Salgado wasn't saying, don't do it, don't explore, don't. This is not anti-progress photograph. But this is a photograph that shows that's not the way to do it. On the way of respecting humans and on the way of respecting the earth. For me, it's an incredibly important photograph. And this is another one from him. Set up another gold mine, where obviously he shot his famous photographs there as well, the whole series of it. Kind of landscape that if you juxtapose with Ansel Adama landscapes, beautiful rivers, mountains, forests, and Sebastião Salgado's landscapes, well, kind of those mines, holes, massive holes in the ground, destroying everything, with thousands of people working there. It looks like nightmare, and it is. That's what he wanted to show. This is again, this is what happenings under their eyes. The moment you switch on your smartphone, or you buy your smartphone, that's what's behind it. The moment you buy your girlfriend some sort of diamond or whatever, that's what's behind it, really. For me, his work was important because, again, it showed me that it is actually possible to have people in photograph in a convincing way, extremely convincing to me, that goes beyond what could be just admired from the photograph. It also this kind of thing that is telling me again and again and again, look at what you photograph. Make your photograph count, every single one, if you can. Don't go and shoot rubbish. Stop down, just like Adams did. It's all the same. Stop, slow down. Make your photograph tell a story that would be important beyond you. This is extremely difficult. Not everyone is able to do that. You know, when I looked at, well, at least a few thousand photographs a day, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that would tell me, that would reach out to me and told me, Derek, stop, look at my photograph here. Not because it's beautiful colors, not because it's technically wonderfully executed, but because it captivates me with what it wants to say, regardless of if I'm reading what an author wanted to say or not, or I'm reading something different, because that's my understanding of the photograph as a viewer. But if there isn't this connection, if there isn't a bridge built between me and the photograph, it just goes. I just move to another photograph, and this is someone that some of you will definitely know, Mr. Tim Rudman, whom I admire enormously. I've never met Tim. Tim lives in London. I learned from Tim from his work, enormous amount of things regarding the execution of a print or execution of a photograph. And that's why I put him here as the last one of my influences. Tim is obviously known mostly by his explorations of Iceland, and I'm happy to have his book An Uneasy Calm. But before I got the book and before I started every now and then online chatting with Tim and discussing photograph, which isn't often and it wasn't deep, because obviously he's too busy and so am I, and we don't know one another really, as I said. So I'm quite happy even to have this kind of contact with him. But before that happened, that's I saw this photograph about 20 years ago, back in that Borders shop I told you before, which sadly is gone because it was a wonderful place to go and buy books and spend time with books and meet people as well. This is a striking photograph to me. This is this very simple concept in monochrome photography. Something is lighter, something is darker. It's you know, that's how you do black and white monochrome photography. But it not always works. And here is this powerful, strong boulder, light, and those mountains at the back, black, and then the sky. And that contrast captivated me. And that was for me the gateway to black and white photography. I remember I saw this photograph. I stared at it for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I read 1 or 2 pages and I closed the book and I went home. And I knew on my way back home that everything changed for me as a photographer, as an inspiring photographer, as a photographer back then who had no idea what I was doing, absolutely no idea looking at in retrospection. Right? But this was like a bit of an epiphany. Wow. It's a photograph about nothing. It's a boulder and rocks, right? And the sky and some mountains. It's not like the subject is important here. There is a message here that goes beyond the subject. And there is this captivating thing made by contrasting those foreground and background, and actually making the middle part of the photograph darker than the bottom and the top. And normally you would kind of expect that people would kind of darken the sky here, which obviously Tim didn't. So I really love this one, and I started, and I knew that I will kind of look into his photographs a lot more. And I didn't even back then I didn't even know who Tim Radman was, and I forgot his name for many years after reading that book. I have this book till now. Again, I didn't have a better copy of this image, so it's a bit fuzzy, but I decided still to include it because that's what Tim is all about. It's toning, and it's beautiful. It's striking. It's very careful toning. I do apologize for the quality of this picture here, but hopefully, if you will kind of look at Tim's work up on the net and find this one, and it's absolutely striking. And that's the last one for now. Obviously, After Dark Iceland. Everybody goes to Iceland, whoever can afford it. And those who don't, they still want to go there, including myself. Never been there. Not sure if I will go there. But seeing day in, day out, hundreds of photographs from Iceland shot from the same spot, of the same waterfall, or of the same mountain. Guys, I'm sick to death of it. Doesn't matter how beautifully the photograph is executed. It just showed me, okay, you were there, you took a trip with, I don't know, coach or whatever organized. They took you where they take hundreds and hundreds of people pretty much every week. You stood in the same spot and you took a photograph of the same thing that shows you, I was there. Unfortunately, Tim's book is out of print now. But going through this book, I've learned so much about the real beauty of Iceland, of places that no photographers go and visit, that it was incredible. And I brought him here precisely because of that, because of this, again, dancing around the teapot, which in his case, and he spent 10 years in Iceland, visiting over 10 years. Explore, explore, and explore. Venture out and look for untrodden paths. Look for your own stuff. Look for your own ideas. Don't follow where everyone else is follow. And this is why, apart from his technical outstanding abilities, this is why Tim Radman rendition of Iceland is absolutely captivating. And you know, that book sits on, you know, close to my desk, and I go through it at least once a month, in even though I know it pretty much by heart now, because those photographs, it's not only that they are beautiful, they're rendered beautifully, it's because they have this idea of not only I was there, but I felt it and I made it mine. And that's, I think, what I started with, and I'm going to finish this part of our meeting today. That is what is very important for me, and I think should be for every photographer and artist, that's what we do if we want to do it well, regardless of whether someone likes it or not. We should make it ours. Guys, it's 8:02. I'll give you 10 minutes now break, and we'll meet 8:12 for a second part when I will be discussing my photographs. So take a break. Gonna let us start the second part. I'll just share my screen again with you. And obviously, the second part will be about my obsessions. And not that I am, you know, tormented by any unhealthy obsessions. But I think photography, art, any creative thing has to do with an obsession of sorts. And that's why pretty much I call this that way. But let us, before we go any further, let us start with this. My background is actually literature, so I'm drawn to the words and what they mean and how they operate and how they can be used within a sentence or a paragraph or a chapter or a book. Words are incredibly important for me. And as some of you know or might know, I also write stuff, so all the more words play an important part in my life. So I looked it up. I looked obsession up, and the general definition obviously is an idea or thought that continually preoccupies or introduces on a person's mind. Which I think is very apt for a photographer, because obviously we kind of always looking for something new to photograph, or if it's not new, then a new way to photograph the same thing. And Keith Elwell, who's here, will be our guest in 2 months' time, and he hails from Malta, and which, as he says, is a very, very small place on the face of the earth. So obviously, I think this way of shooting the same in a different way, exploring the same thing over and over and over again in this kind of compulsive manner will be something. It's a shout out to you, Keith, at the moment. I'm very much looking to it. Now here is I looked for synonyms as well, because synonyms work very well if you want to understand the language, the word. And it's fixation, passion, mania, compulsion, addiction, in idea fix from French. I would definitely cross out mania, in my case at least, but I would definitely leave all the other words, all the other synonyms. Um, it really tears me apart when I can't find my own definition for a subject. When I reach the point when I have to give up looking for it because I've explored everything I could in my mind, and I got nowhere. It's definitely a passion, and I think every one of us, every one of you shares the same. It's definitely a compulsion, because for one reason or another, I just have to photograph. That's it. That's as easy as that. It's addiction because it keeps me returning to it. You know, a week without a camera in my hand is a week wasted. Not exactly, because there are other things in life, but it's very very hard. Idea fix is this, that I want to create something, uh, like I believe everybody wants to create something that will outlive him or her. That even if it's only related to, to his family, even if only my kids would appreciate that, that's already big for me. I don't need to be uh, world famous. I don't need to be Ansel Adams or anybody else. But if my kids are proud of what I've done and want to have it on their walls, I'm more than happy. Bodiam Castle is one of those places that I love visiting very often. It's not far away from here. It's about 70 miles from where I live. Uh, it's on the way to the seaside. It's a lovely spot about 14 miles away from Hastings, for those of you who are familiar with the area. And it's a small, by today's standard, but by back then it's not that small, medieval castle that is very well preserved. The walls are very well preserved, um, and I've studied it before going there for the first time, and then I went and I found that it's one of those places that will have me return to it over and over and over again, just for the hell of it, because it's nice to be there, and it's nice to photograph it. Um, it's a square castle uh, that looks pretty much like that. It's very well preserved. It's gutted inside, so we have only walls here, outside walls. Um, but you getting the picture here, pretty much. It's a lovely structure. And this photo was taken in infrared, which I thought would suit the picture, the image as well. But it's not really what I wanted to do. I saw this structure first and I thought, it's perfect, but not as it is. It should look very different. And I don't have a straightforward way of envisaging things or seeing things the way I would love them. I'd rather, it's rather a discovery as I go. So I knew also in this case that it's not exactly what I want, but I didn't exactly know what is where I would like to arrive at. And that was this kind of obsession that I went there a few times, and you know, the weather was this or the weather was that, was good, was bad, as it is normal. The clouds were in that place or never there where I wanted it. People were walking around because the place is obviously full uh, with people all the time. I didn't like some parts of the reflection as well here and there, but it wasn't it. And I think at the fourth or fifth visit there, the penny dropped, and I thought, what I really want is this kind of Gothic 16th century scary kind of style of a castle. That's what I'm after. And I started exploring this, and I got to that. That's what I did it with this castle. And for me, um, that distorted structure that is nearly falling apart, dimmed with this infrared sky, a bit ominous, I hope, is where I wanted to arrive. And actually, this is an image that you would see first if you go to my website. It's exactly where I wanted to be, exactly what I wanted, how I saw, how I felt that place should look like from the moment I've saw it, even without realizing this, just getting there slowly by a number of explorations, and the number of images, large number of images taken from all angles around it. Another place. This is Reculver in Kent, North Kent, just beyond from London, beyond Whitstable and Herne Bay. This is an incredibly important part of English place of English history. First, people who came from what is known now Belgium and the Netherlands, who first came to the island, settled there. There was a settlement of Celtic tribes. Later, Anglo-Saxons, when they're invaded, they came there, they took it over. Later, it was the Romans, and just right to this remnants of the church, just meters away from where I was standing, is a plaque commemorating a big important Roman fort. Later, it was Vikings, and obviously Christianity came as well, and there was a church and monastery. It used to be a much bigger place. On the right, there is a kind of a cliff here already, but it used to be a lot bigger. Sea reclaimed a big chunk of land here. You can always see people there, and I decided to start with this kind of just a normal photograph from summer solstice, where people come and gather. And this group told me they come there and they sit there and they have cake and wine, and they've been doing it for 30 years. The same group of people, give or take few. And they treated me lovely to a cake. I sadly had to turn down the wine because I was driving. It's around 40 miles away from where I live. It's a lovely place, a place that I go and visit 4, 5, 7, 8 times a year, just to be there. It has this wonderful vibe about it that I've spotted, that I met only in a one more place in the world that I will talk later on. And I want to start this with this sort of typical snap rabbit in a picture, so you can see how it pretty much what it looks like. And this is the same one, but then we're kind of like 100 years ago, or whatever. Just a kind of a joke of a picture, but again, something that would start an exploration with this. And obviously, you can make out the group of people here a lot less than in the previous one when they're stripped of color. So obviously, the viewers more dragged to the church itself. But that was just fun. This was on a very different visit when I came. I think about a year and a half ago, to explore it. And this is also a place where I very often come and shoot my sunsets, because this high cliff here, and the sun goes down just behind the church towards London, and it's a vast expanse of sea, of the Thames estuary, and if the conditions are right, it gives absolutely stunning results. This area is this area that I told you about, this Roman fort. All of this was, and a lot more was this Roman fort. This was quite a big one. And you can see there is a little sundock forming here, which really nicely, to me, added to this. But again, it's not too much of an exploration in terms of photography exploration of this place yet. That is another picture. This is actually my most sold ever picture. I keep selling it and selling it and selling it and selling it and selling it all across England and all across Europe. For some reason, people love it. I love it too. I was very, very happy taking this picture. And the reason why I was happy is not because only it just came right in terms of sharpness, in terms of the water not being too milky. But also because it kind of shows the sacrum and profanum, this juxtaposition that I like, that I really like in photography. That it's a church, or it used to be a church, but it was place of worship, a place of contemplation, place of looking beyond everyday and beyond this life. But so close to it, we've got this water outlet that comes from wherever they would have slaughtered the animals to eat, washed they produce, and so on. A place of sacrum, a place of profanum, sorry, a place of profanum where the normal everyday life goes on. That has nothing to do with those prayers, with those looking ahead into the afterlife, with this whatever scientific explorations were going there in the monastery. I liked it for that reason, and for that reason I've taken it. This is not something that that is unique. Lots of people go, lots of photographers. Everyone who lives in Kent pretty much goes there. Definitely those who live in northwest Kent go there. You can meet photographers there pretty much on every trip. And a lot of people took this photograph from the same angle. It's not like this is a unique photograph. It's unique for me because that's what I wanted to show it. I just didn't want to show juxtaposition of some church in the distance, and here we've got some interesting foreground. That wasn't enough for me. I need this message. I need this story in this photograph. And for me, that sacrum and profanum here in this photograph, whether someone sees it or not, for me it is very, very important. The weather was good, the weather was right, the clouds were where they should be this time, and the tide was out. Normally the tide comes out all the way up to here, sorry, up to here. So, or here this is all up to there. This is all below water when the tide is in. And again, a very different rendition to the same church. This is an infrared photograph, long exposure of about 5 minutes, taken with a very deep blue filter. And my aim was to have the feel that I have watching Gladiator, the film. And in that film, there is a lot shot in infrared. A lot of scenes are shot in infrared. And if you haven't noticed, if you watch it again, all those scenes where he's kind of dreaming are shot in infrared, and he's kind of traveling across the field. I don't know if I succeeded. I did for me. I don't know if anyone else can see that, but I like this photograph. I still like it. And I will definitely try and go and shoot from the same vantage point with the same filter when in different weathers, to see how I can explore this concept further with the same filter, with the same settings and everything. I will be just trying to record the same feel, if possible, with different clouds, maybe with different level of tide. For some reason, this is a place where I come from calm. This is my go-to place where I go and seek my calm. It's 40 miles away from home. It's about 1 hour's drive. I don't often go there always go there with the camera. I sometimes go there without the camera. And then I just sit here with my back to the church, looking into the sky, looking into the sea, looking into the big wide open, and contemplating it, how beautiful that is. Sunsets or sunrises. It's a wonderful place for me. I'm very, very happy to have found it. And as I said, it's nothing secluded. There is always loads and loads of people. This path leads to a pub, and a car park, and there are caravans there, and lots of people. But for me, it's a place of quiet where I somehow, for some reason, find it for myself. And that's why perhaps I try to explore it, take it from different angles, take it from different ways. And in this way, I understand it has become a little bit of an obsession, a little bit of a fixation for me to try and sort of maybe unscramble why, of all the other places that I go and visit, this one has become so important for me. And that's another place that is that I have this feeling in, Pyramid of the Sun. For 7 years, I went to Mexico pretty much on the same date within a year, September, year in, year out. And every time I went to the Teotihuacan for a whole day, and sat there on both of the pyramids, the Pyramid of the Sun and Pyramid of the Moon, and venture out into those areas behind them where tourists normally don't go, where there's lots of smaller installations. Happened very often that I fell asleep under the tree and woke up suddenly a couple of hours later, unbothered by anybody. And I tried to have the feel of this place, what happened in this place. And this is a very steep thing, Pyramid of the Sun. It's not easy to climb. As you climb, you see people resting and wheezing, very, very tired. It's a very steep thing. Not to mention climb down, because then it's a bit dangerous, because steps are very narrow as well. And every year I went there, I took photographs. Initially, it was just snaps from seeing, just like you go and you see the place for the first time. But then every other years, I tried to understand this place for myself. Um, Knowing what went there. It's a place where in a peak up to 150,000 people lived. And if you can imagine of infrastructure for all those people that had to be there, which is gone. All you can see is the pyramids and the valley of the Avenue of the Dead, and those little pyramids all around it, and some walls that perhaps were houses or some places of storage or whatever that might be. But I was looking for a long time how to portray this, what this place might have been in the past. And one day when I was there, those clouds were just right, the light went through, and those people, and if you are there, people climb it and they spend a lot of time up there, and they kind of try to soak the energy they believe is there. And you see a lot of them standing with hands up as if praying to the sun. They just expose themselves to sunrise. They don't really pray loudly. I don't know even if they pray at all, but you see them doing that, and that's what I wanted to shoot, catching them in that position, some of them at least, with some sort of clouds that and light streaks that would somehow seem to be responding to them, as if God was noticing them and answering to them. And that was what I wanted to take in this photograph, and I hope it's somehow I was able to make it. It's an incredibly important photograph. As you can see behind me, there are some photographs by me, some of those that I like most, and this one sits there in the corner, and I put here only those that are really important for me as a photographer. Trakai Castle, that's another not that old but old installation. That's in Lithuania, 30 miles away from Vilnius. Castle that used to belong to the Grand Duke of Lithuania, and prior to that belonged to his cousin, who was his to say the least opponent on the way to the throne, but they made it up eventually. I go there on a very different thing, but I know quite a lot of photographers there. Also, Lithuania and Poland have a long history. We've been connected through union for 400 years in history, which is longer than anything else in Europe. And back then, it was the Union was created the biggest country in Europe. That kind of culminated with the partition of Poland, and 172 years of Poland being wiped out of the map until it was restored after the First World War. So it's a part of history of a different country, but also it's a part of history of my own country, the country I come from, because that king of Lithuania, or prince of Lithuania, became at the beginning of 15th century king of a brand new dynasty in Poland, and he was actually one of the best Poland ever had, kings Poland ever had. So it's a typical 15th century structure on a lake, easy to protect. but I've always also felt easy to be trapped in, really. The lake is big. I drove all around it with my Lithuanian friends, and there are a lot of other things to shoot there. We were there exactly a year ago to the day. And today I was supposed to be there again. Obviously, not possible. We'll make it up some other time. Very quiet place where I was standing on the bank of the lake. Behind me, about 30 um, meters behind me, there is already a very busy during the day, very busy road. So it's not like it's a quiet place, although it is quiet in the photograph. We went there the day before, and I was actually doing a workshop. And because the guys didn't want to shoot in Vilnius, they said, "Oh, there is this castle, blah blah." And I thought, okay, let's go there. It's only 30 kilometers away. And obviously, having heard the name, I knew where I was going. So I was all the more up for it. When we arrived the first day, it was raining. It was raining too much, really, to do some serious workshopping thing. So we walked around a bit, we got wet, we returned to Vilnius and enjoyed all the pubs and drinks and their exquisite cuisine, which really is wonderful there. And we returned the next day a little bit earlier. We were here in the spot when it was pitch black and you couldn't even make out the castle. And it didn't look promising. It looked kind of drab and very gray, as it pretty much was expected in January, right? But it wasn't raining, which was good. And as the sun was coming up, there was more and more light in the air, the castle started emerging. So we started shooting. I was explaining about filters and composition and whatnot. And every now and then I was kind of pressing my own shutter, but more just to record I was there. I wasn't satisfied with anything. And then suddenly, I think that was an hour and a half towards the end of the morning, those clouds started waving and making this absolutely wonderful reflection with those little subdued but still pastel colors. And the light was sitting on the reeds. That was that I hope are conveying how cold it was. You can imagine it was a cold morning, and it was absolutely quiet. Nobody about apart from us, and all you could hear is just the shutters clicking every now and then. The guys were not even talking. It was so beautiful, so calm, so lovely, which is what I've said a million times before, is what I'm looking for in photography, and especially long exposure photography. This is about 15 or 20-second exposure, sort of long-ish exposure. A place worth visiting if you ever find yourself in Lithuania, which apart from this has lots of other things to offer. And to me, again, a wonderful, my very own. I remember when that clouds came that way, just for really, I don't know, half a minute or so. I said to the guys, this is what we came here for, guys. This is what you wait 2 or 3 hours for, to click, to press your shutter this way and bring that home with you and remember this moment, remember that place this way. And the clouds will be gone. And I don't know, the water might be ruffled and everything. There will be people around. But for me, this is what it was. This is how I remember it. And this is how I will always remember it, no matter how often I will go there, and I will go there pretty much next couple of years, every year again, COVID permitting, of course. Something everybody, pretty much everybody loves, misty mornings. Where I live currently, which is a town on the outskirts of London, about 3 miles south of the river. So a nice walk. There isn't much to photograph. Well, to be frank with you, there is nothing to photograph here. Absolutely nothing. It really is outskirts of London. But there is a lake. Not a big one, but there is a lake which I started discovering in normal weather. And then when I saw a mist report 3 years ago, I decided to go there. And that's what I found. I'm addicted to blue color. What can I say? This is my favorite color, and I decided to render this in blue to make it a little bit unrealistic, as mist should be, I believe. And that was one of those first photographs that I took. But then I thought, okay, this is a wonderful opportunity for me as a photographer and a bit of an explorer who goes all around the world 3 or 4 times a year to see wonderful locations. Now that we are in lockdown, now that we can't go anywhere, and I observe lockdown very strictly. I think I haven't moved out of the house for 12 days now. And not only now, all through the lockdown. Now that we are restricted to travel, and as I said, the place I live in, it's not a very inspiring place photographically. Let's do this exercise with myself. If I can go and explore that little thing in Lithuania, or explore and try and finally, I believe, managed to take the picture I wanted all the way across the pond in Mexico. If I can go and shoot stuff in Georgia or Malaysia that I'm happy with, what's wrong with me that I can't do it here where I live? Must be something in me that I need to challenge. And that happened. That was the trigger that kind of set me on this. And because I love mist and fog, and I've done quite a lot of photographs of mist and fog in the past. I thought, yeah, that was a year ago. I've just returned from Lithuania. Lockdowns were starting, and in February this picture was taken last year. And if you care to visit my blog, there is an entry called Feb is Fab regarding this experience. But then I thought that needs exploration. I really liked, to my great surprise, I really liked what I came across, what I did here. I really liked the certain parts of it, which would call for the same approach as Ansel Adams had with this tree only. Just limited, just single out something and look for what would really catch my eye. And here I was mesmerized by this kind of one shape that has so much in it. And as I said, I grew up near the forest, almost in the forest. This is all very important to me. Those trees and shapes of trees and how they position and everything. It mesmerizes me. It captivates me. It calls me always. It haunts me almost. And this is another one. This is actually a couple of meters away from the other place. The fog was so dense that September, last September, when they could go out a little bit, and that I was able to visit this place almost every day of the week, throughout the week, and there was fog. So I was shooting the same places over and over and over and over again, and trying to, and coming home and working on those pictures, and thinking, that's wrong. I need to do it better. I would like it to be like that or like this. That's what's missing for me. I like this one. I need to try and keep this and achieve the same thing here. And I don't shoot much square. I love square format. I absolutely love square format, and perhaps that's why I love not only one reason, but Lee Tippett's photography. Is always shooting square. I think it's very direct. I think it's very precise. I think it focuses the viewer on the thing, and has certain constraints that are challenging for a photographer. That are always welcome. So I was exploring this spot, and I was experimenting with this spot a lot, both in terms of the angle of shooting, the length of the exposure, the lens used, and I used prime lens only, cropping, time of the day as well. This fog was very dense. It was just before sunrise. It was so dense you couldn't see that. That's not far from the bank I was standing. It's about 20, maybe 30 meters away. I couldn't see that at all when it was dark. Not because it was dark. Normally you would see it very well, but the fog was so dense. So I had to wait as the fog lifts, and I was taking different pictures in the moment. At the moments when I thought that makes it good. That makes a good combination between the trees and the fog. But I was also experimenting with split toning of those images later on, and of course, as I said, with the form, and that would be a wider picture of it. It's very difficult for me to say which one I like. I normally really dislike when photographers put something on whatever, Facebook, Instagram, two versions of one photograph, and you say which one you like. For crying out loud, you are an author, you are an artist, you should know. It's your work. It's not what they like. You shouldn't be asking people. You should come with a proposition. That's what I put on the table for you. But in this case, to be very honest, I love the square picture, but I also like this one very much, especially that I work on a 27-inch screen, which now I can see this on the screen, the full, looks absolutely fantastic. So it's an exploration of those two. But the exploration didn't start here because, as I said previously, I was inspired by photographers who believe that they have something to say, and they are able to convey this message that I can decode it. Sitting 50 years later, or 100 years later, or a couple of years later only, as in case in Sebastian Salgado or Tim Rudman, sitting in a different part of the world, but I can read it. It's in a way written in the same language. And I wanted this, explore this a bit further. And for me, I love the color here. I love the toning. I love the shape, especially the one here. In I think in eventually I would have gone for a square format to present this picture. I think it's focused. It has all that's needed. This nice curve and reflection. There's a curve here. There is a dialogue between those trees in terms of lines and shapes. But that is not enough for me. I wanted again this kind of a bit scary. I mean, it was really dark. I was there alone. It's outskirts of London. It's not wise to go alone with an expensive camera in that hours, right? I've uh, 2 years ago taking pictures on another foggy morning. Uh, I was approached by three guys, 15, 14, 16, who just, and I was kind of in a taking a street, standing in a very narrow passage, like a meter and a half. And I knew that those three guys perhaps have knives with them. And they were talking half a meter away from me. And I knew that they were talking about some harm, taking my camera away and whatever. It's not wise to be alone out there. And I wanted this image to look a little bit more scarier, to have this, to have this feel that I had, not being afraid of those guys, really, but not being comfortable with the situation either. But I wanted this to look pretty much like that, to be more Gothic again, to be more, be cautious kind of photograph message. And out of those 3 or 4 photographs that I finally taken out of there were 100 or so I've taken there, that's my choice, because it has this a bit of mystery about it, maybe a bit of danger. It's a bit ominous. It's not only, as I feel, nice and beautiful like this one. I think it is beautiful. It's beautiful to me. But here it has something beyond that. Sorry, it's my mouse. Oh, it's my mouse being very delicate. Here is something beyond that. It has something that make viewers say, I need to think about it. I need to look into that photograph more than once. It's not that I like this photograph. It's that this photograph is talking to me. That's what I wanted to achieve. Just like I respond to Tim Rodman's photograph, to Ansel Adams, to Sebastião Salgado. I am constrained by my normally in photography by my work. I can't go and shoot whatever I want. I have to produce a decent quality photography magazine, which takes hours and hours and hours and hours of rent, right? But whenever I can, even this lockdown, this near me, this thing, sort of, 3 miles walk away from home, on the other side of the town, I believe things can be found, wonderful things, photography can be found. And I actually found a lot more in the place I live in, a lot more. And I will no longer say there is nothing to photograph here. There is maybe not to start with when you start living here, but then as you go along, you explore and explore and explore and find more. And that's another one from the same spot. this one was in the group, in our group, uh, of all my photographs, which don't get that much attention anyway, which is fine too. But this one got a lot last year. I decided to render it in a classical monochrome with some foreground, juxtaposition of darker and foggier and everything worked for me. But I still prefer the previous one. I hope you have a few minutes more. We should be finishing now, but I'll go just through this. After 20 years of wanting to do it, I finally am able to do infrared photography. I've always loved the effect, especially this dramatic effect. We had last month we've seen a lot of photographies from infrared taken in the States by Paul Gallagher, who, as Paul said himself, their objective was to use infrared, but to create photographs that would have a very wide dynamic range. For me, that works, and I love his photography, and that's why I invited him. And that's why I interviewed him like a year and a half ago for the mag. But for me, as a photographer, I prefer, at least for now, this kind of more jarred, more squeezed in terms of tonality photographs, kind of going back to what photographers in 100 years ago did outside of America, those European photographers, where they said, okay, forget about midtones, let's focus on black and white and squeeze it in photography. And this one is actually not about this, but I decided to do it. This is the beauty of infrared, to see the world in a very different stuff. This is just outside of the London City Hall, in the PricewaterhouseCoopers building at the back. To the right, if you would have gone here, there was a way you would have gone to 2 minutes walk to London Bridge Station. To the left, it's again 2 minutes. It's Tower Bridge. For me, lovely. That was taken about a month ago. When I went to London for a couple of hours, and I love this effect that it kind of makes that patch of living things kind of float by not only by juxtaposition it with light and dark around it, but all by itself, which probably in a non-infrared photography would not be achievable. And also the sort of bit of wacky colors and all that. Very happy with this one. This is again, this is monochrome, of course. Infrared photography taken where I live in a park. This is a bandstand. Used to have a spike here. It's gone for some reason. I loved the how the clouds went, and for me, clouds are very, very important in photography. I'm not. I had big argument with myself this morning about if I should put my cloud collection here, which is extremely important for me, but I decided not to. As you can see, this is a very shallow depth of field, which I shooting in 24 mil, I love. I use f 2.0, f 3.5 whenever I can, to give it a little bit more 3D kind of. But this is again, this was shot with a long exposure infrared. That's Scotney Castle in Kent, very beautiful place, where I was testing the breakthrough filter X4, which is about 17 stop filter, and I've taken quite a lot of photographs there, and it's a perfect subject for infrared. All these IVs and broken walls, and it's, you know, generally ancient kind of looking stuff. Fantastic place for photography and for walks as well. And this is again picture taken there, and unfortunately I no longer have this picture. This is a screenshot, and that's why it's a bit fuzzy. I do apologize for this, but I've decided to put it here because this image was very important for me, and I'll probably try to recreate that at some point. I was shooting, that's again Scotney Castle within the grounds. I was shooting this, and obviously with I'm not really a great fan of infrared long exposure. It needs very careful planning. None of this was planned really. It was testing the filter. The reason why I'm not very fond of this normally is because infrared, well, the whole point of infrared here in kind of landscape is that white foliage, and if you add long exposure, foliage gets fuzzy, and you lose the effect, the crispiness of the image. However, this one here, foliage plays a very marginal role. Suddenly, that couple sort of stood there, ignoring, you know how it is when you take long exposure. People think you don't take an image because you don't press the shutter. And they were holding hands and kind of looking at this for a minute or so. And I was immediately happy with this, because this is a very old place. This is a place in ruins. And my idea was to show that, which I do in lots of my photographs, to show that nature is more powerful than humanity, than man. Not humanity, than man. That whatever we do, nature will prevail, and we are only a part of nature. And I try to sneak this message a lot in my photographs, not those I presented today, but that's very, very important for me. So I was shooting those old ruins, and then they came along, and I thought, perfect. They just complement this image so well. The title of this image is "None of Us is Here Forever." And because they were there, because that was long exposure, because they were slightly moving, so they're not sharp either. I think that this complements this message here that I try to include in the title. So as I said, I might go and have a stab at recreating this, because that was something I really, really like. It was really what I always say, my photograph, not just the photograph of the place, but something I really wanted to do. That was in my plan. Covermoords is not far from here. It's 16 miles from here. It's just by the city of Rochester. And it's a nice stretch of wood, and it has this inside, and it's a mausoleum. I won't go, because there's no time. I won't go into detail, but it was consecrated, but no one is interred there. It sits in the grounds of the woods, somewhere in the middle of it. If you don't know it, you stumble upon it, and it's a big surprise. What the hell is it, and why is it here in the forest? And obviously there is a story to it, and it's a National Trust place, so you can go and have a read. And again, because I wanted to look at this, and I've shot this hundreds of times, this place, to give this rendition of a little bit this Gothic kind of style again. It's a mausoleum. So I was always try to have the sun beyond it and this kind of dramatic sky. This is infrared image. There's another one taken on a different trip, completely different edition, also infrared. You can see it's been taken not far. It's a pretty recent image. Different cloud, different angle, different side. This one, again, a testimony to me loving clouds. You know, big sky above what is pretty much supposed to be a grave, saying nature is bigger than us, or we are just a part of it. Just like, you know, we're not really different than those trees. This is here, trees are there. It's like a big row. But I was looking for a really, as I said before, I'm looking for a really definition of my image, something that I would happily sign my name under. And this is it. I was walking around this place a lot, and it's a lovely forest. It's apart from the fact that there are cows everywhere, so you have to be very, very careful where you tread. But this is mausoleum. This is a place to consecrate death. So I was looking to add to this, not to shoot just a mausoleum, but to shoot it in the whole environment. I call this image the land of the dead. And I specifically shot this where there was no leaves, where there is just very stark contrast here, where there are almost no midtones, where this part would be kind of leading to the mausoleum would be a lot darker, with the shadows of the tree behind me, and some sort of burnt ground as well. That is something that I want. It was a difficult image to take technically, because when I was taking it with 24 and 35 millimeter lens, the mausoleum looked kind of funny, and the trees were bending, and even when I tried in post processing to strengthen it, it wouldn't work. So I went there again on the next day after taking this pre-planned photo, really pre-planned, very well photo. I went there again, and this is a panorama of 11 shots taken. Not much of work is done, just dimming the sky a little bit, and trimming it into 16:9 format, which is one of my favorites. As I said, I was born in the land of forests, and this is again from Cobham Forest, exploring this Cobham Forest. This is one of the my favorite trees there that I really love. And obviously, when photographers shoot trees, they look for something special, and to me, this is very special. I shot this tree, I don't know, 150,000 times. This is the best shot for me that actually oozes the age. And age, I like to believe, is connected to wisdom. And it's very pagan thing, very old thing in the history of humanity to connect those two things as well. And that is the same tree, and that's what I called that's why what I call obsession, to explore this subject again and again and again and make million mistakes, but it's the same tree taken from a different angle, on an absolutely dreadful, unphotographic, flat, light weather. And I was looking at this, and this is all post-production thing, that I was looking at this, that tree, that shape of the tree reminds me of something. There is a recollection in my mind that is born by looking at this tree. And then I got it. It's the romantic poem, German romantic poem by Goethe. If you guys interested, I've put this picture together with the poem, also in English, on my wall on Facebook. So I won't be talking about it now. But I wanted this to look scary, to look mesmerizing, to look in a way fantastic, captivating. That if you imagine a young man, a young boy, looking at it for the first time, suddenly will get all these mixed emotion about it. I don't know if I succeeded, but I did my best to do it. And again, this is the same tree. I was shooting it from under that tree here, standing, shooting this, getting this image. So again, obsession with exploring, dancing around the teapot, as they say, exploring the subject, looking for my own rendition of it, which is to say, I am not that much interested in the tree itself or in the object itself. I am a lot more interested in how I feel about it, how I understand it, how I see it, and how I would like to photograph it, which is again to see, if I was a painter, that's how I would paint this tree. And that's again, sky and the same forest, recently, massive sky, just a riot, all this, suddenly this just came out of the blue for about half an hour. And I was just next to this tree, which is another one that I shoot very, very often there, in all kinds of weathers and times of year. And then I saw this forming, and I thought, like, that is pretty awesome. What's happening here in the sky? That is pretty what I came here for again. Pretty much the same moment, the same kind of feeling that we had back in Lithuania, shooting Trakai Castle with those clouds. I'm very happy I have found this forest. It's only 16 miles away from me. It's no distance with a car, and it's absolutely fantastic place for me to be. It has all kinds of trees, and a lot is possible to shoot there. I just presented a few images from that place, but I've shot this in all across the year when it was possible for us to go there. And I've got loads of images from, also non-infrared images from all seasons. And very briefly, London, because obviously I was born in a city which is small, but it's still a city. So I'm a city boy. And then I came to live, after much consideration, in 2000, I came to live in England, having visited the country a few times before, and living in other big cities prior to my coming to London. And I spent in London, living in London, 20 years. I mean, in London, not where I live now, but in London. I literally lived next, this is Barbican Towers, for you guys to know that. I lived there. I lived behind this picture is Tate Modern. I lived like a half a mile down a road. I lived in north, east, west. I lived all around the place because I wanted to know London. For first 6 years in London, I've changed house every 7-8 months. Not because I was not paying bills and they kicked me out, but because I wanted to see this magnificent, beautiful, big city that I love. And I have to tell you, I love London for all dark corners of this, dark stuff that is happening there. I love London. However, I have, as someone who explored the city very well, I believe I did, what I call the love and hate affair, because I'm not blind and to lots of stuff that's happening there. And I don't mean only knife culture or drugs or stuff. I mean also poverty of people. I mean discrepancy between certain groups of people. I mean those issues that plague pretty much every big city. And that's why I decided to render those couple of images. I'm presenting only one, but I've taken pretty recently. These are all infrared images as well, but they're toned, split toned, in a kind of steely, cold tone. And I call this series Cold City, because it is Cold City. It is cruel. It is absolutely beautiful, but it's cruel. If you're not tough, if you're not careful, it will cut you in pieces and spit you out if you go wrong and if you make mistakes. That's what London, as every city, really is. And I've been fortunate here, meeting absolutely right people, working in right places. So, you know, I can love this city rather than hate it. This is again, this is a combination of my ideas of what photography should be about, and I'm presenting here the wonderful Thames barrier, which is hardly visible really if you look at the whole picture. You can't make it out immensely because, again, as I said, nature is bigger than humans. I wanted to shoot the sky. I wanted to show how big sky is. London is a big city. It's wonderful. It's there somewhere, small and unimportant here, where these clouds, that sky expanse is beautiful. It's big. It's unconquered. Together with vastness of the Thames. That was my goal here in this picture. It's again panorama of 6 or 7 frames, shot in with a 24mm, which is my usual lens. Now, if you go to very briefly, if you recall the image from the 2 images from the first part, you will very quickly see the influence, and I was very happy. That's the St. Catherine's Dock in London, close to Tower Bridge. When I saw this, I was jumping for joy because I was looking for it for years. And I know St. Catherine's Docks very well. Bethnal Green is not far, and I used to live in Bethnal Green. That was my sort of port of call here. But this boat is new there, and this boat has all the qualities that I needed to create this picture: lines, curves, circles. The study of geometry of photography. Very careful framing from my side, but really a very happy moment for me as a photographer, working on this image, looking for something like this for, I would say, 15 years in London. As I said, when I was finishing on Mohanlal, it is, you know, he was playing with lines and curves, looking up and looking down. But when you do it yourself, you realize how difficult it is to frame something interesting, to find a subject that would kind of correspond with the interest. I believe I found it here, and I'm, as an author of this picture, I'm very pleased with this frame. And that's the last one. I won't be talking about it much. I wrote an article that I put in the last magazine, last LEMAG, on it. It's incredibly important picture for me as well. Very briefly, I have a series called London Less Visited. Someone who came to London like me and explored the city. And obviously everyone comes to London knowing a little bit of the city, knowing Tower Bridge, knowing Big Ben, knowing this, knowing that, knowing London Eye. Rubbish, all rubbish, right? Because London, real London, is completely somewhere else. When I have friends come down visit, I always try to show them those places that are more London than this. I won't go into detail here, but this is one of those places. The whole series has images that are taken not far from those tourist spots, but places where tourists almost never or never go and visit. You can see Tower Bridge here. You can have thousands of people there. Here, I needed just a long exposure of a couple of seconds just to have those guys who were passing there disappear. Nothing else. No one ever comes here apart from locals who know where it is, right? And on the left-hand side, you've got wonderful restaurants you can have dinner or lunch at, and still see the Tower Bridge. The series is much bigger, of course, but I think this is the most important image as well. Also, what I was looking for, it's the lines, and you have those kind of curvatures here and here that kind of lock this image within the frame and hold everything in the middle. I write on this in LEMAG. That will be also put on my website. If you guys care to read it, that's where you find it. With this, I would like to thank you very much for listening to me and sharing this time with me and looking at my influences and my own photographs today. So thank you. If you have, guys, any questions, I'm happy to answer them right away. Although I know we've slipped time a bit. But you would need to unmute yourself. Keith, I can't hear you. Keith, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Right, there we are.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to say thank you very much indeed for what was a wonderful personal perspective on your photography. And I think a lot of what you said, I think resonated with me and hopefully resonated with the other guys as well. So yeah, a lot of things to think about there, Derek.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you very much indeed.
It's my pleasure.
It was a very nice presentation, Derek, and thank you for this time. And I think you are a real inspiration guy.
Guy Edgaras. Guys, this is the guy who took me to Trakai Castle. This is the guy who was kind enough to take me there twice, spent time with me in the big weather, drove around me and around this big lake and showed me a few absolutely wonderful places. Edgaras, we were supposed to meet tomorrow by my plan, but we will meet. Don't worry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there are any questions, either you write them or just in the chat, please, or guys, or you, or if anyone is interested in asking. If not, then I appreciate that it's late and we've been here for 2 hours plus. Thank you very much again for your time. I wish you a lovely evening, the rest of it, and the rest of the week. And I see you online shortly.
Thank you, Derek.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye now.
Right.